Strip him. Flog him like the street dog he is. The bride's voice cut through the elegant gardens of Eco Hotel like a machete. Hundreds of wedding guests in their finest agbada and Gelly turned to stare. The live band stopped playing. Even the Lagos heat seemed to pause. Chukwudi collapsed at the Golden Gates, his bare feet bleeding onto the manicured lawn. He clutched a crumpled newspaper clipping. Chief Okonkwo's wedding announcement. The guards had already torn his threadbare shirt. Now they raised their koboko whips. "Please," Chidi whispered, looking up at the woman in the ₦1,000,000 wedding gown. "I just need to see him. Chief Okonkwo. He's my father." Adana's perfectly made-up face twisted with rage. She had worked too hard, planned too long, eliminated too many obstacles to let this filthy street rat ruin her moment. She was minutes away from becoming Mrs. Chief Okonkwo, the richest woman in Lagos. Nothing would stop her. "Your father." She laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You think Chief Okonkwo, the oil magnate, the man who dines with presidents, is your father?" She spat near his feet. "You are nobody. You are nothing. You are the dirt under my shoes." She turned to the security men, her eyes blazing. "What are you waiting for? I said flog him. Make an example of him so no other beggar thinks they can disrespect me on my wedding day." The first lash of the koboko struck Chidi's back. He screamed. The guests gasped. Some pulled out their phones to record. In Lagos, scandal was entertainment. The second lash fell. Then the third. Chidi curled into a ball, trying to protect his head. Blood mixed with tears on his face. Through the pain, through the humiliation, he could only think one thing. "I found you, father. After 10 years, I found you." Then a voice boomed across the garden, powerful as thunder. "Stop. Not one more strike." A tall man in an expensive Ermenegildo Zegna suit pushed through the crowd. This was Emeka, Chief Okonkwo's nephew, newly returned from his business empire in South Africa. He had been running late to the wedding. Now he stood frozen, staring at the bleeding boy on the ground. Emeka's face went pale. The shape of the eyes. The scar on the left eyebrow. It was impossible. But it was true. "Chidi," Emeka whispered, kneeling beside the boy. "Chukwudi. Is it really you?" At the sound of his full name, his real name, spoken with recognition, Chidi looked up. Through his swollen eyes, he saw the face of the older cousin who used to play football with him in the compound, who taught him to ride a bicycle, who cried at his funeral. "Cousin Emeka," Chidi breathed. "You remember me." Emeka's hands shook as he wrapped his jacket around Chidi's beaten body. He stood slowly, his eyes finding Adana. The look he gave her could have melted steel. "You will pay for this," Emeka said quietly. "I promise you, you will pay for what you've done." "Emeka, what is this madness?" Adana's voice was shrill with panic. "You can't possibly believe this street thief. Where is my nephew?" The crowd parted like the Red Sea. Chief Okonkwo himself appeared, magnificent in his white agbada embroidered with gold thread. At 65, he was still imposing, still powerful. But his eyes were tired. They had been tired for 10 long years. "Uncle," Emeka said. "Come and see." Chief Okonkwo walked forward, irritation on his face. His wedding was being disrupted. His bride looked distressed. He had guests to entertain, business partners to impress. Then he saw the boy on the ground. Time stopped. Chief Okonkwo saw past the dirt, past the blood, past the rags. He saw the eyes of his dead wife, Mom Ngozi. He saw the smile of the 6-year-old boy who vanished from their Ikoyi mansion a decade ago. He saw the son he buried in an empty coffin while his heart broke into pieces. "Chukwudi," the chief whispered. The name was a prayer. "Daddy," Chidi sobbed. The billionaire fell to his knees on the grass, not caring about his expensive clothes, not caring about the cameras, not caring about anything except the miracle before him. He pulled his son into his arms and wept like he had not wept since the day they lowered that empty coffin into the ground. The wedding guests stood in shocked silence. The bride's face went from red to white to gray. And somewhere in the crowd, a woman named Adana realized her carefully constructed world was about to collapse. But how did we get here? How did a boy disappear for 10 years only to return at his father's wedding? And what role did the beautiful bride play in this tragedy? Let me take you back to where it all began. Welcome to African Tales. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and share it with your friends, and most important thing, turn your notification bell so you can get informed when I dropped another amazing story. Drop your thoughts and reactions in the comments. What would you do if your spouse tried to kill you and you survive? Will you take a revenge or disappear forever? Victoria Island, Lagos. A decade before the wedding. Chief Okonkwo was not just wealthy. He was a king among men. His oil and gas empire stretched across West Africa. His name opened doors from Abuja to London. Politicians sought his counsel. Business moguls courted his investments. His fleet of luxury cars could fill a showroom. But his greatest treasure was not in any bank account. It was 6-year-old Chukwudi, called Chidi by everyone who loved him. Their mansion in Ikoyi was a palace of white marble and gleaming windows, surrounded by high walls and lush gardens that seemed to stretch forever. But it was not cold. It was filled with warmth, with Chidi's laughter as he chased butterflies in the garden, as he played with his toy cars in the expansive parlor, as he sat on his father's lap learning about the family business. "One day, this will all be yours, my son," Chief Okonkwo would say, ruffling Chidi's hair. "But first, you must study hard and grow strong." "Yes, Daddy," Chidi would reply, his eyes shining with love and trust, the distinctive scar over his left eyebrow crinkling when he smiled, a small mark from when he'd fallen learning to ride his bicycle. Mom Ngozi, Chidi's mother, was the heart of their home. Beautiful, kind, educated, she had been a successful lawyer before choosing to become a full-time mother. She and the chief had married for love, not arrangement, a rarity in their social circle where marriages were often business transactions. Every evening, she would read to Chidi from books of African folk tales. Her favorite was the story of the tortoise who was patient and wise, who overcame obstacles through cleverness and perseverance. "Remember, Chidi," she would say, her gentle voice melodic. "In life, you must be like the tortoise. Patient, clever, and always true to yourself. The world will test you, but your character will see you through." "Like Daddy?" Chidi would ask. "Yes, my love. Like your father. Strong but kind. Powerful but humble." The family was complete. Perfect. Untouchable. Or so they thought. Because someone was watching their happiness with envious eyes. Someone who saw their joy as an obstacle to her own ambition. Someone who was already planning, already plotting, already waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Adana Akoli was the daughter of Chief Okonkwo's business partner. She had been groomed from childhood to marry wealth and power. Beautiful, educated in London, sophisticated beyond her 25 years, she was the type of woman who turned heads at every social gathering. When she first saw Chief Okonkwo at a corporate dinner, she decided he would be hers. It didn't matter that he was 30 years older. It didn't matter that he was happily married. It didn't matter that he had a son. In Adana's world, obstacles were simply problems waiting to be solved. She began slowly, strategically. She attended the same charity galas, the same business conferences, the same high society events. She positioned herself in the chief's orbit, always at the periphery, always visible but never pushy. She studied him. His habits. His weaknesses. His love for his family. And she befriended Mom Ngozi. "You have such a beautiful home," Adana would say, visiting for afternoon tea. "And Chidi is adorable. You're so blessed." Mom Ngozi, kind and trusting, welcomed the young woman's friendship. She had no idea she was inviting a viper into her garden. Adana became a regular visitor. She learned their routine, their security measures, the schedule of the household staff, when the guards changed shifts, when Mom Ngozi took Chidi out for his educational excursions. She noted every detail, every vulnerability. The chief barely noticed her. He had eyes only for his wife and son. To him, Adana was just his partner's daughter. Pleasant enough, but irrelevant to his world. That indifference only made Adana's obsession burn hotter. One evening at a business dinner, she watched Chief Okonkwo laugh with his wife, watched him lean over to kiss Mom Ngozi's hand, watched him show her something on his phone, probably a picture of Chidi. Adana's grip tightened on her wine glass. The perfect life. The perfect family. The perfect love. She wanted it. All of it. And she had learned early in life that what Adana wanted, Adana took. She pulled out her phone and sent a text to her younger brother, Obinna. It's time. Find the men we discussed. Reliable ones. Ones who can keep their mouths shut. Obinna replied, Are you sure about this? This is dangerous. I didn't ask if it was dangerous. I said find them. She put her phone away and smiled at the other guests, raising her glass in a toast. To family, she said sweetly. The most precious thing in the world. If only they knew what she really meant. The day started like any other Tuesday. The Lagos sun rose bright and warm over the Okonkwo mansion. Chidi woke early, excited. Today, Mom Ngozi was taking him to the National Museum in Onikan. His tutor had assigned a project on Nigerian history, and Chidi wanted to see the ancient bronze sculptures he'd read about in his books. Daddy, can you come with us? Chidi asked at breakfast, his small legs swinging under the large dining table. Chief Okonkwo looked up from his newspaper and smiled sadly. I wish I could, champ. But I have important meetings today. Big business deals. He reached over and tapped Chidi's nose affectionately. But you take lots of pictures, and tonight you can tell me everything you learned. Deal. Deal. Chidi beamed. Mom Ngozi drove them in her Mercedes, the family's regular driver having the day off. The museum was moderately crowded with school groups and tourists. Chidi held his mother's hand tightly as they walked through the exhibits. He was mesmerized by everything, the ancient pottery, the royal regalia, the intricate bronze heads from Benin Kingdom. But his favorite was a large bronze sculpture of a warrior on horseback. He looks so brave, Mama, Chidi said, standing on his tiptoes to see better. He was a great warrior, Mom Ngozi explained, reading the placard. He protected his people. Just like your father protects us. What neither of them noticed was the museum security guard who kept glancing their way. Or the white van parked outside with tinted windows. Or the three men in casual clothes who had been following them since they arrived. These men had been paid well. Very well. And they had been given clear instructions. Take the boy. Don't hurt him too badly. Just make him disappear for a while. Adana had told them it was just a scare tactic. A way to make the family vulnerable. She would swoop in as a comforter, a friend in their time of need. Then, when enough time had passed, the boy would be found and returned. She would be the hero. The chief would be grateful. Emotional. Vulnerable. That was the plan. But plans have a way of going wrong. Chidi wandered a few steps away from his mother, drawn by a display of colorful traditional masks. Mama, look at this one, he called out. In that moment, that tiny, fatal moment, the men moved. One grabbed Chidi from behind, clamping a cloth over his mouth. The chemical smell was strange and scary. Chidi tried to scream, but the sound came out muffled. He kicked and struggled, but the man was too strong. Mom Ngozi turned at the sound of the commotion. When she saw a man carrying her son toward the exit, something primal awakened in her. Chidi! She screamed, running after them. Somebody help. They're taking my son. The second man stepped in front of her. She tried to push past him, but he was built like a wall. When she wouldn't stop, when she kept screaming and clawing at him, he struck her. Hard. She fell to the floor, her head hitting the corner of a display case. Blood pooled beneath her. Other visitors screamed. The security guard, the one who had been paid to look away, suddenly pretended to just notice the situation and started shouting into his radio. But it was too late. The men were already out the door. The white van's engine roared to life. Within seconds, they were swallowed by Lagos traffic, just another vehicle in the chaos of millions. Inside the van, 6-year-old Chidi was terrified. The cloth had made him dizzy. His head felt heavy. The last thing he saw before everything went black was his mother's face, twisted in fear and pain, getting smaller and smaller as the museum doors closed behind him. When Mom Ngozi regained consciousness in the hospital 3 hours later, her first words were, "Where is my son? Where is Chukwudi?" The police officers standing by her bed had no answer. The news spread like wildfire. First through Lagos, then across Nigeria, then around the world. Billionaire's son kidnapped in broad daylight. Chief Okonkwo rushed to the hospital, his powerful composure shattered. He had faced down corporate raiders, navigated treacherous business deals, survived economic crashes. But nothing had prepared him for this. "I'm sorry," Mom Ngozi sobbed in his arms. "I'm so sorry." I looked away for just a second. Just 1 second. "This is not your fault," Chief Okonkwo said fiercely, though his own heart was breaking. "We will find him. I swear to you, we will bring our son home." He spared no expense. Private investigators, the best in West Africa and beyond. International child recovery specialists. He contacted Interpol, the FBI, MI6. He offered a reward of 500 million naira. More money than most Nigerians would see in a lifetime. His face was on every television screen, every newspaper, every billboard across the country. "Please," he begged in press conferences, tears streaming down his face unashamedly. "If you have my son, I will give you anything. Everything. No questions asked. Just bring him back. Please." Meanwhile, far from Lagos, in a remote area of Kogi State, Chidi was being held in a dark, damp room. The men had panicked when the story exploded across national media. This was supposed to be a quiet snatch and release. Now it was an international incident. "We have to get rid of him," one man said. "You mean kill him?" another asked, horrified. "No. Just abandon him somewhere. Far from here. Let someone else find him." They drove for hours, eventually stopping in a rural village. Under cover of night, they left Chidi, still drugged and disoriented, near an orphanage. Then they scattered, each man fleeing to different parts of the country. When the orphanage workers found the boy the next morning, he was confused and traumatized. He could barely speak. When they asked his name, he whispered, "Chukwudi. Where are your parents?" I don't know. Mama. Daddy." But the details were fog. The trauma had fractured his young mind, locking away the memories behind walls of fear. The understaffed, overwhelmed orphanage never made the connection to the famous missing boy from Lagos. After all, why would the son of a billionaire end up hundreds of kilometers away in a rural village? And so, Chidi disappeared into the system. Lost. Forgotten. Or so everyone thought. Back in Lagos, the search continued for months. Then years. Chief Okonkwo became a man possessed. He followed every lead, no matter how unlikely. He traveled to neighboring countries, chasing whispers and rumors. He interviewed every criminal, every informant, every person who might know something. But the trail was cold. Colder than the bottom of the ocean. Mama Ngozi deteriorated. The head injury healed, but something inside her had broken beyond repair. The guilt consumed her like a cancer. "I should have held him tighter," she would whisper, staring at nothing in Chidi's empty bedroom. "I should have never looked away. Not for a second." She stopped eating. Food tasted like ash. She stopped sleeping. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Chidi being carried away, saw his little face twisted in fear. The doctors diagnosed severe depression. They prescribed medications. Therapy. But how do you heal a mother's broken heart? How do you cure the guilt of losing a child? Chief Okonkwo watched helplessly as the love of his life faded away. He brought in specialists from Europe, from America. Nothing worked. And watching from the shadows was Adana. She visited often, playing the concerned family friend. "I'm so sorry for what you're going through," she would say, holding Mom Ngozie's thin hand. "Is there anything I can do?" What Mom Ngozi didn't know was that Adana was doing something. Something terrible. Through a contact, a disgraced doctor who had lost his license and needed money, Adana obtained a substance. It was rare, untraceable, and deadly in the right doses. She would visit, make tea, add just a little to Mom Ngozie's cup when no one was looking. Not enough to kill quickly. Just enough to weaken the heart gradually, to make the depression worse, to speed the inevitable decline. 3 years after Chidi vanished, Chief Okonkwo and Mom Ngozi made a heartbreaking decision. They held a symbolic burial. An empty coffin was lowered into the family plot. It was an admission of defeat, a final goodbye to the hope that had sustained them. But for Mom Ngozi, it wasn't closure. It was the final breaking of her spirit. She died quietly in her sleep 2 weeks later. The official cause was complications from depression and heart failure. Everyone who knew her nodded sadly. "She died of a broken heart," they whispered. Only Adana knew the truth. Chief Okonkwo was now utterly alone. The 2 lights of his life had been extinguished. The grand mansion became a mausoleum. The silence was deafening, broken only by the echo of his footsteps in empty halls where laughter used to live. He stopped going to his office. He delegated his business empire to trusted advisors. He declined all invitations. He refused all visitors. The titan of industry became a recluse, a ghost haunting the corridors of his own gilded cage. He would sit for hours in his study, staring at a portrait of his wife and son, wondering why God had taken everything from him. Wondering if it was punishment for some sin he couldn't name. He didn't know that God hadn't taken his son. He didn't know his son was alive, lost in the system, slowly growing up in poverty and fear. And he didn't know that the woman who had orchestrated it all was waiting patiently, like a vulture circling wounded prey, ready to swoop in and claim her prize. The stage was being set for Act 2 of Adana's plan. And this time, nothing would stop her. Or so she thought. While Chief Okonkwo mourned in his mansion, Chidi was learning to survive in hell. The orphanage in Kogi was overcrowded and underfunded. There were too many children and too few resources. Meals were watery gari and occasional beans. Education was sporadic. Love was a luxury no one could afford. But Chidi had something the other children didn't. Fragments of a better life locked away in his traumatized mind. Sometimes, in dreams, he saw flashes. A big white house. A woman's gentle smile. A man's deep laugh. Butterflies in a garden. He would wake up crying, not understanding why. The other children thought he was strange. Chidi day see visions, they would whisper. He day talk about mansion and cars like say he be prince. When he was 10, disaster struck again. The orphanage was shut down due to lack of funding and corruption allegations. The children were scattered. Some went to relatives. Some to other orphanages. Many, like Chidi, simply drifted away. With nowhere to go and no memory of home, Chidi made his way back to Lagos. Something pulled him to that city, an instinct he couldn't explain. A feeling that answers waited there. But Lagos was not kind to homeless boys. He learned to sleep under bridges, in the shadows of the wealth he once knew but couldn't remember. He begged at traffic lights, dodging Danfo buses and Okada motorcycles. He ate from dustbins behind restaurants in Victoria Island, always hungry, always afraid. The streets taught him harsh lessons. Trust no one. Everyone wants something. Sleep with one eye open. Thieves and predators are everywhere. Fight for every scrap. The weak don't survive. He was beaten by area boys who controlled begging territories. This our junction. Go find your own place. They would kick him, take whatever coins he'd collected. He was chased by police during raids. Street urchin. Thief. Even when he'd stolen nothing, he would run because staying meant jail or worse. He survived malaria twice with no medicine, just prayer and the stubborn will to live. He survived infected cuts and empty belly nights. He survived the rainy season that flooded the bridges, survived the harmattan cold with only rags for warmth. 8 years on the streets. 8 years of degradation and survival. Chidi became a shadow, one of thousands of invisible street boys that Lagos stepped over and ignored. But something kept him alive. A spark of hope he couldn't name. Sometimes, when he was alone, he would touch the scar over his left eyebrow and feel like it meant something. Like it was a sign that he came from somewhere, belonged to someone. The other street boys called him Professor, because sometimes he would draw in the dirt, elaborate buildings and cars and butterflies. "Where you learn that?" they would ask. "I don't know," Chidi would answer honestly. "It just comes to me." Then came the day that changed everything. Chidi was begging near ShopRite in Acacia, his voice hoarse from thirst. "Anything, please." "God bless you, sir." "Madam, just 20 naira." "God bless." Most people ignored him. Their faces were hard, their steps quick. To them, he was just another unfortunate statistic in a city full of poverty. His eyes, scanning the crowd out of habit, landed on a newspaper vendor's stand. One headline caught his attention because of the large photograph. Lagos billionaire Chief Okonkwo to wed in society event of the year. Chidi stared at the man in the photo. The picture showed an older man with gray-streaked hair and a neat beard, standing next to a beautiful woman in an elegant dress. Both were smiling, but the man's smile didn't reach his eyes. There was a sadness there, deep and permanent. Something stirred in Chidi's chest. A feeling like lightning and thunder combined. His heart began to pound. He knew that face. Without thinking, operating on pure instinct, Chidi snatched the newspaper and ran. The vendor shouted after him, but Chidi was already gone, disappearing into the Lagos crowd like smoke. Under his bridge, hands trembling, Chidi read the article. The words were difficult. School had been a lifetime ago, but he persisted. Chief Okonkwo, oil magnate and philanthropist, will marry socialite Adana Akoli this Saturday at Eco Hotel. The wedding comes 15 years after the tragic death of his first wife, Ngozi, and the unsolved disappearance of their only son Chukwudi, who was kidnapped at age 6. Chukwudi. The name hit him like a physical blow. Suddenly, the walls in his mind didn't just crack, they shattered. Memories exploded like fireworks, vivid and overwhelming. The garden. The butterflies. Mama reading to him at night. Daddy spinning him around until they were both dizzy. The museum. The men grabbing him. Mama's scream. The darkness. The fear. And then nothing. Years of nothing. Years of surviving when he should have been living. Chidi collapsed on the dirty ground, shaking and sobbing. "I am Chukwudi Okonkwo," he whispered to the empty air. "That man, Chief Okonkwo, he's my father. He's my daddy." The other street boys gathered around. "Chidi don finally craze finish," one said, shaking his head. "He say he be Chief Okonkwo Pekin. Na real madness this." They laughed. But Chidi didn't care. He didn't care if they believed him or not. For the first time in 8 years, in 10 years since he was taken, he knew who he was. And he knew what he had to do. Eco Hotel in Victoria Island was about 15 kilometers from Chidi's bridge in Mushin. For someone with money, it was a 20-minute drive in traffic. For an 18-year-old boy with no money, no shoes, no food, and a body weakened by years of malnutrition, it might as well have been a journey to the moon. But Chidi had already survived the impossible. What was 15 more kilometers? He looked at the newspaper again. The wedding was on Saturday at 2 p.m. He checked a calendar on a nearby wall. Today was Wednesday. He had 3 days. He could make it. He had to make it. He started walking. The first day was brutal. The Lagos sun beat down mercilessly on the asphalt. Chidi's feet, bare and calloused as they were weren't prepared for kilometers of hot pavement. Within hours, blisters formed. By evening, they had burst and bled. He begged for water at small shops. Some people saw the desperation in his eyes and gave him a sachet of pure water or the dregs of their coke. Others chased him away. "All thief, go away from my shop." He slept in an abandoned kiosk that night, clutching the newspaper to his chest like a sacred relic. It was his proof, his map, his hope. The second day was worse. Hunger was a constant gnawing pain. His vision swam. His legs trembled with every step. But every time he wanted to give up, to just lie down and let the world end, he would look at his father's face in the newspaper. "I'm coming, Daddy," he whispered. "Just wait for me. I'm coming home." He walked through areas he once knew as a child, though the memories were hazy. The high walls of Ikoyi mansions. The gleaming cars. The security guards who shooed him away when he tried to rest in the shade. "Move from here, you dirty beggar." If only they knew. If only anyone knew. By Friday evening, he had made it to Victoria Island. But he was in terrible shape. His feet were raw meat. His lips were cracked and bleeding from dehydration. His body was shutting down. He collapsed near a church, unable to go further. A kind pastor's wife found him. "Jesus," she exclaimed. "This boy is almost dead. Bring water. Bring food." She gave him bread and water. She cleaned his feet and bandaged them with cloth strips. "Where are you going in this condition?" she asked. "My father," Chidi whispered. "I have to, wedding. Eco Hotel. Tomorrow." She thought he was delirious. "You rest here tonight. Tomorrow I will help you get to wherever you need to go." But when she woke on Saturday morning, Chidi was already gone. He had left before dawn, unable to wait, unable to risk being late. He reached Eco Hotel at noon, 2 hours before the wedding. The hotel was magnificent, a towering structure of glass and luxury. Outside, preparations were in full swing. White canopies bigger than houses. Golden chairs that probably cost more than everything Chidi had ever owned. Roses everywhere, their perfume almost sickening in its richness. A string quartet was practicing. Staff in crisp uniforms rushed about. Luxury cars began arriving, Range Rovers, Mercedes S-classes, even a Rolls-Royce or two. This was a different world. A world Chidi had once belonged to but now seemed as distant as another planet. He stood across the street, watching. Fear gripped him. What if his father didn't recognize him? What if no one believed him? What if they just threw him out? But he had come too far to turn back now. He had walked for 3 days. He had survived 10 years. He could do this one last impossible thing. He crossed the street, his bleeding feet leaving marks on the pavement. He approached the golden gates where 2 massive security guards stood, their muscles bulging under their uniforms. "Please," Chidi said, his voice barely a whisper from thirst and exhaustion. "I need to see Chief Okonkwo." The guards looked at him with instant disgust. Here was everything wrong with Lagos. Filthy beggars trying to crash high society events. "Move away, street boy," the first guard said harshly. "No beggars allowed here. This is a private event." "You don't understand," Chidi pleaded, holding up the crumpled newspaper with trembling hands. "This man, Chief Okonkwo, he's my father." The second guard laughed. It was a cruel, mocking sound. "Your father? You think Chief Okonkwo is your father?" He looked at his partner. "This one Don craze well. I'm not crazy." Chidi's voice broke. "Please, I'm telling the truth. Just let him see me. He'll know. He'll remember." "Remember what?" "That he picked up a street rat." The first guard grabbed Chidi's arm roughly. "Leave now before we deal with you properly." But Chidi couldn't leave. After 3 days of walking, after 10 years of being lost, after everything he'd survived, he couldn't walk away now. He fell to his knees. "Please," he sobbed. Please, I'm begging you. I've come so far. I just need to see him. Just for a minute. Please. The commotion was starting to attract attention. Guests arriving in their luxury cars slowed down to stare at the pathetic scene. Some took pictures. Others whispered among themselves. And that's when she appeared. The bride. Adana emerged from the hotel in her $1,000,000 wedding gown, a vision of white silk and crystal beads. She was surrounded by her bridesmaids and friends, all laughing and chatting. She was on her way to greet some VIP guests at the entrance. Then she heard the shouting at the gate. Her perfectly sculpted face, which had been glowing with triumph, twisted into a mask of fury when she saw what was happening. A filthy street boy was causing a scene. At her wedding. On her day. She marched toward the gate, her heels clicking angrily on the paved driveway. Her entourage followed, eager to see the drama. What is this? Adana screeched, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. What is going on here? Who let this thing near my wedding? And that's where we came in. That's where everything began to unravel. The ride back to the Okonkwo mansion was surreal. Chidi sat in the back of the Rolls-Royce, nestled between his father and Emeka, wrapped in a warm blanket that felt softer than any cloud. His father never let go of his hand, holding it like a lifeline, as if Chidi might vanish again if he loosened his grip. Chief Okonkwo kept touching Chidi's face, his hair, his shoulder, reassuring himself this was real. Tears streamed down the billionaire's face unchecked. The most powerful man in Lagos was reduced to a father who had thought he'd lost everything and suddenly found the world again. I never stopped looking, the chief whispered, his voice raw. Never. Not for one day. Chidi leaned into his father's embrace. I know, Daddy. I always knew you'd be waiting. At the mansion, a doctor was already there, summoned by Emeka during the drive. Dr. Ibrahim, the family physician, examined Chidi with gentle hands and concerned eyes. The assessment was grim. Severe malnutrition, dehydration, infected wounds on his feet, signs of old injuries that had never healed properly, possible internal damage from years of inadequate nutrition. He needs immediate treatment, Dr. Ibrahim said quietly to Chief Okonkwo outside the room. 4 fluids, antibiotics, proper nutrition gradually introduced. His body has been through trauma. We need to be careful. Whatever he needs, Chief Okonkwo said fiercely. Whatever it costs. I don't care if we have to fly in specialists from America, Europe, anywhere. Just make my son well. A warm bath was drawn. Chidi, embarrassed by his filthy state, was helped by gentle nurses. They cleaned years of street grime from his skin, carefully washed his matted hair, treated his wounds with antiseptic that stung, but he didn't complain. When he looked in the mirror afterward, he barely recognized himself. Clean. In soft pajamas that felt like luxury. Bandages on his feet. He looked almost human again. A meal was prepared, but Dr. Ibrahim insisted it be small and simple. His stomach has shrunk. Too much food too fast could be dangerous. So Chidi ate soup and bread slowly, savoring every bite. It was the most delicious thing he'd ever tasted. Or maybe it just tasted like home. Through it all, Chief Okonkwo sat beside him, watching him breathe, watching him eat, watching him exist. Making up for 10 years of not being able to watch his son grow. Forgive me, the chief kept saying. Chidi, my son, forgive me. I should have protected you better. I should have. Daddy, stop, Chidi interrupted gently. You didn't know. None of us knew. But I'm home now. That's what matters. But Emeka, standing in the doorway, knew that being home wasn't enough. Justice hadn't been served yet. While the family was cocooning in their reunion, Emeka stepped into the study and made calls. His mind was working, connecting dots, seeing patterns. The kidnapping. The convenient timing of Adana's appearance in Chief Okonkwo's life years later. Her vicious reaction at the wedding. Not surprise, but rage, as if Chidi's appearance had ruined carefully laid plans. Victor, Emeka said into his phone, calling his most trusted assistant from South Africa. I need you in Lagos. Tomorrow. Bring your team. We have work to do. Victor was a genius with technology and investigation. If there was a digital trail, he would find it. What am I looking for? Victor asked. Everything on Adana Okoli. Financial records. Communications. Associates. Go back 10 years. I want to know every person she's ever paid, every place she's been, every secret she's hiding. You think she's involved in the kidnapping? I know she is, Emeka said coldly. I just need to prove it. Meanwhile, at her luxury apartment in Banana Island, Adana was having a meltdown. Her wedding had been destroyed. She had been so close. Minutes away from becoming Mrs. Chief Okonkwo, from securing her place at the top of Lagos society, from accessing billions of naira. And that boy, that street rat, had ruined everything. Her phone wouldn't stop ringing. Friends calling with fake concern but real curiosity. Family members demanding explanations. Her social media was exploding with videos of her ordering chidi beaten. The hashtag bride beats begging was trending. How could you? One comment read. He was just a boy asking for help and you had him flogged like an animal. This is the real face of the rich, another said. Cruel and heartless. But the worst were the ones that were starting to question. Wait, what if he really is Chief Okonkwo's son? What if she knew? Adana threw her phone across the room. She needed to think. She needed a plan. Her younger brother, Obinna, called. Adana, what have you done? The video is everywhere. I had him removed. He was disrupting my wedding. But what if he's telling the truth? What if that's really? It doesn't matter. Adana snapped. We need to control this narrative before it controls us. She called her friend Zainab, a popular blogger with millions of followers. I need your help. That boy at my wedding. He's a scammer. A professional con artist. I need you to expose him. By midnight, the counterattack had begun. The story hit the blogs before sunrise. Street scammer cons grieving billionaire. The shocking truth about the wedding crasher. Zainab's blog, with its massive following, published Adana's version of events. By morning, it had been shared thousands of times across Nigerian social media. The narrative was clever and devastating. Chidi was a professional scammer who had studied Chief Okonkwo's tragic story for years. He had surgery to mimic the lost child's features. He coached himself on family details from old newspaper articles. He even deliberately created a scar over his eyebrow to match photos of young Chukwudi. This was his biggest con yet, crash a billionaire's wedding, claim to be the long-lost son, and position himself for a massive payout. Photos appeared online. Grainy images allegedly showing Chidi meeting with known 419 scammers in computer villages. Witnesses came forward claiming they knew him as a Yahoo boy who specialized in emotional manipulation schemes. Within hours, public opinion began to shift. Nigerians loved a good comeback story, but they hated being fooled even more. I knew it was too good to be true, people commented online. No street boy survives 10 years and conveniently remembers everything right before a billionaire's wedding. This is 419 evolved. Emotional scamming. Brilliant but evil. That bride was right to chase him away. She was protecting Chief Okonkwo. By noon, new articles were positioning Adana as a hero. The sharp, protective bride who spotted the scam before it could succeed and was now being villainized for trying to save her fiancé from fraud. At the Okonkwo mansion, Chidi woke to chaos. He had slept peacefully for the first time in years. In a soft bed, in a safe place, in his father's house. But when Emeka showed him the headlines, his face went pale. They're saying I'm fake, Chidi whispered, his hands shaking as he scrolled through the vicious comments. They think I'm a criminal. After everything he'd survived, after finally finding his father, the world was calling him a liar. The cruelty of it was almost unbearable. Chief Okonkwo was enraged. This is Adana's work. It has to be. I'll sue them all. No, uncle, Emeka interrupted calmly. We can't fight this with emotions. That's exactly what she wants. We need proof. Hard, undeniable evidence. What kind of evidence? The chief demanded. DNA test, Dr. Ibrahim suggested. It will take a few days, but it's conclusive. Science doesn't lie. A few days. Chief Okonkwo exploded. My son is being called a fraud, and you want me to wait days? Uncle, please, Emeka said firmly, placing a hand on his shoulder. If we react emotionally, we play into her hands. She wants chaos. She wants you to look desperate and foolish. We stay calm, gather evidence, and then we crush her completely. He turned to Victor, who had just arrived from South Africa with his laptop and equipment. Start digging. I want to know everything about Adana Akoli. And I mean everything. Victor nodded, his fingers already flying across his keyboard. I'll find the skeletons in her closet. Everyone has them. Especially people who try this hard to look clean. But Emeka's instincts told him this went deeper than just a smear campaign. The kidnapping itself, the timing of Adana's entry into the chief's life, the poison in her reaction at the wedding, this woman had secrets. Dark ones. I also want you to look into the original kidnapping, Emeka added. Find the investigating officers. Find anyone who might remember unusual details. Someone orchestrated this. Someone with resources and connections. Dr. Ibrahim took blood samples from both Chidi and Chief Okonkwo for the DNA test, then sent them to 3 different laboratories. One in Lagos, one in Abuja, and one in London. We'll have results by Wednesday, he promised. Chidi sat quietly through all of this, feeling like a burden. Maybe I should just leave, he said softly. I'm causing too much trouble. Leave. Chief Okonkwo grabbed his son's shoulders. You are going nowhere. This is your home. You are my son. I don't care what lies people tell. I know who you are. But what if the tests? The tests will confirm what my heart already knows, the chief said fiercely. You are Chukwudi. You are mine. And nothing, will change that. Chidi's eyes filled with tears. After years of being nobody, of being invisible, someone claimed him. Someone wanted him. Someone believed him. Thank you, Daddy, he whispered. While the Okonkwo family prepared their defense, Adana was feeling triumphant. Her counterattack was working perfectly. She sat in a cafe in Victoria Island, scrolling through supportive comments with satisfaction. Adana is a queen. She saw through his lies. Chief Okonkwo should thank her for saving him from this scammer. That boy should be arrested for fraud and emotional manipulation. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered cautiously. Well played, a male voice said. But you're not as smart as you think you are. Adana's blood ran cold. Who is this? Someone who knows what you did 10 years ago, the voice continued smoothly. Someone who knows about the kidnapping. About the men you hired. About what you did to Mom and Ngozi. The cafe suddenly felt too small, too bright. Adana gripped her phone tighter. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course you don't, the voice said mockingly. Just like you don't know that one of those men, the ones who took the boy, is still alive. And he's very interested in talking to investigators. For the right price, of course. This was blackmail. But it was also a threat she couldn't ignore. What do you want? Adana asked quietly. 20 million naira. I'll send you account details. You have 48 hours. If you don't pay, he goes to the police with everything. Including proof that Mom and Ngozi didn't die naturally. The line went dead. Adana sat frozen, her coffee growing cold. How much did they really know? Was this just a scam, or did someone actually have evidence? She couldn't risk it. She had money saved from her years of strategic social climbing. 20 million would hurt, but it was better than prison. What she didn't know was that the caller wasn't a real blackmailer. It was Victor, using voice modulation software and an untraceable phone. He was laying a trap, testing Adana's guilt. And her reaction had just confirmed everything. Victor worked through the night, fueled by coffee and determination. His screens glowed in the darkness of his hotel room, displaying financial records, communication logs, and digital footprints. Adana's finances were a maze of legitimate transactions and carefully hidden payments. But Victor was better than good. He was exceptional. He found the cracks in her armor. "Emeka, look at this," Victor said at 3 a.m., his eyes red but excited. Emeka, who had been dozing in a chair, jolted awake. "What did you find?" "A shell company. Registered in Benin Republic, but operated from Lagos. 10 years ago, this company made several payments to various individuals. Small amounts, always in cash, never traceable through normal means." "So how did you trace it?" "Bank employees sometimes keep better records than they're required to. And I have friends who have friends." Victor pulled up a document. One of those payments went to a man named Tund Bello. He was employed as a driver by the Akoli family, Adana's family, 10 years ago. Emeka leaned forward. "Tell me more about this Tund." "It gets better. Tund was arrested 5 years ago for attempted kidnapping in Abuja. He served 3 years. He's out now, living in Ajigunle, barely surviving. A man with experience in kidnapping, connected to Adana's family, who received mysterious payments around the time of Chidi's disappearance." Emeka's eyes were cold. "We need to talk to him. Now." "It's 3 a.m., Victor pointed out. "Then we'll talk to him at sunrise." At 6 a.m., Emeka and Victor arrived in Ajigunle, a neighborhood where poverty and desperation lived side by side. Tund's address led them to a small room in a decrepit building that smelled of mold and broken dreams. Tund answered their knock with suspicion. He was middle-aged, thin, with a haunted look of a man who had made terrible choices and was paying for them every day. "Mr. Bello," Emeka said, showing his ID. "We need to talk about something that happened 10 years ago. About a little boy who was kidnapped." Tund's face went gray. He tried to close the door, but Victor had his foot in the way. "We're not police," Emeka said quietly. "We're not here to arrest you. We're here for the truth. And we're willing to pay for it." The mention of money made Tund pause. He let them in. His room was small and sparse, a thin mattress on the floor, a small stove, a few clothes hanging on nails. This was a man who had nothing left to lose. "I was just the driver," Tund said after a long silence, sitting on his mattress. "I swear to God. I didn't know what they were planning until it was too late." "Who is they?" Emeka asked, though he already suspected. "Adana. Her brother Obinna. And some thugs they hired from the area." Tund's hands shook. "I drove them to the museum that day. I thought we were just... I don't know what I thought. Following the family to learn their routine, maybe. But then I saw them grab the boy. And you said nothing. I was afraid. These are powerful people. They said if I talked, they would kill me. They paid me to keep quiet." Tund looked up with red eyes. "I spent 3 years in prison for something else. Every day, I saw that little boy's face. He was crying for his mama. That sound. It haunts me. Do you have any proof?" Victor asked. "Anything that connects Adana to the kidnapping?" Tund hesitated, then reached under his mattress. He pulled out a battered old phone, the kind from 10 years ago, before smartphones. "Insurance," he said. "In case they ever tried to blame everything on me. This phone has text messages from Obinna. Planning messages. Details about the boy's schedule. Where he would be, when, who would be with him. I saved everything." Emeka's hands shook as he took the phone. This was it. This was the evidence they needed. Victor immediately connected the phone to his laptop, downloading and backing up every message. The texts were damning. Target confirmed at museum Tuesday 2 p.m. Mother will be alone with him, driver's day off. Payment transferred, 2M Naira as agreed. Sister says keep him for 2 weeks then release far from Lagos. Plans changed, media too hot. Abandon boy in Kogi, scatter immediately. It was all there. A complete timeline of conspiracy. Why didn't you give this to police before? Emeka asked. Because I was part of it, Tun said bitterly. I would have gone to jail anyway. And I was scared. But now. He looked at the two men. Now I'm tired. Tired of running. Tired of the nightmares. If you can protect me, I'll testify. I'll tell everything. We can protect you, Emeka promised. And we can make sure this testimony destroys the people who destroyed that family. By that evening, the DNA results came back from all 3 laboratories. All 3 were identical. 99.99% probability that Chukwudi is the biological son of Chief Okonkwo. The chief held the papers with trembling hands. He had known in his heart, but seeing scientific proof was different. It was undeniable, unassailable. Send these to every media house in Nigeria, he ordered. Today. Now. Within hours, the narrative shifted again. DNA confirms, street boy is billionaire's long-lost son. Miracle in Lagos. Chief Okonkwo's son found after 10 years. Wedding crasher vindicated. Scientific proof confirms identity. The same people who had called Chidi a scammer were now celebrating him as a hero. The same blogs that had published Adana's lies were now publishing retractions and apologies. Nigerian social media exploded with joy and anger. I knew it. That boy was telling the truth. What kind of monster orders a lost child beaten? Adana Akoli needs to be investigated. Something isn't right about this whole situation. But Emeka wasn't satisfied with just clearing Chidi's name. He wanted justice. Complete, devastating justice. He called a meeting with the police commissioner, an old friend of the family. He presented everything, Tun's testimony, the text messages, the financial records, the shell company connections. This woman didn't just react badly at a wedding, Emeka said coldly. She orchestrated the kidnapping of a 6-year-old child. She destroyed a family. And I believe she also had something to do with Mom Ngozi's death. The commissioner, reading through the evidence, looked grim. This is serious. Very serious. If what you're saying is true, we're looking at kidnapping, conspiracy, possibly murder charges. It's true, Emeka said. And I want her arrested. Today. Give me until morning, the commissioner said. I need to brief my team and prepare proper arrest procedures. For someone this high profile, we need to do everything by the book. That night, Adana sat in her apartment, watching the DNA confirmation news with growing horror. Everything was falling apart. The boy was real. The son was real. Her perfect plan had imploded. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Payment not received. Time is up. Police have been informed. Run while you can. Adana's hands shook. She needed to leave. Nigeria. Africa. Maybe go to Dubai or London. She still had money, connections, options. She started packing frantically, booking a flight for the next evening. She could disappear. Start over somewhere else. She'd done it before, building herself from nothing. She could do it again. But what she didn't know was that Emeka had already alerted airport authorities. Her passport had been flagged. She wasn't going anywhere. The police arrived at Adana's Banana Island apartment at 6 a.m. 6 officers, led by a stern female detective named Inspector Okafor. Adana was in her designer pajamas, having barely slept. She opened the door expecting maybe a delivery or building maintenance. Instead, she saw the police badges. Adana Akoli, Inspector Okafor said formally. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit kidnapping, child endangerment, and fraud. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in court. For a moment, Adana just stared. Then she tried to slam the door. But the officers were already moving, pushing inside, handcuffs ready. This is a mistake. Adana screamed as the cold metal closed around her wrists. I've done nothing wrong. This is Chief Okonkwo trying to destroy me because I rejected him. Save it for your lawyer, Inspector Okafor said coldly. We have witnesses. We have evidence. We have everything. As Adana was led to the police vehicle in handcuffs, cameras were already there. Someone had tipped off the media. Probably Victor. The photos of the beautiful bride from just days ago, now in handcuffs and disheveled, would be front-page news. The fallen bride. Wedding planner arrested for decade-old kidnapping. At police headquarters, Adana was processed and placed in a holding cell. Her expensive lawyer arrived within hours, demanding her release, claiming false arrest, threatening lawsuits. But then the police showed him the evidence. The text messages. Tun's testimony. The financial records. The lawyer's confident expression faded. My client will not be making any statements at this time, he said quietly. But Adana's brother Obinna was a different story. When police arrived at his Abuja office, Obinna had been expecting them. He had seen his sister's arrest on the news. He knew what was coming. And unlike Adana, Obinna's conscience had been eating him alive for 10 years. I'll tell you everything, he said before they even read him his rights. I want immunity. Full immunity. But I'll tell you everything. The prosecutor, sensing an opportunity for a guaranteed conviction, agreed. And so Obinna talked. He talked for 3 hours straight, laying out the entire conspiracy. How Adana had been obsessed with Chief Okonkwo for years. How she'd planned to remove the obstacles. First the child, then the wife. How they'd hired thugs through intermediaries. How the kidnapping was supposed to be temporary but went wrong. How Adana had befriended Mom Ngozi, gaining access to the house. How she'd obtained poison from a disgraced doctor. How she'd gradually added it to Mom Ngozi's tea over months. She was patient, Obinna said, his voice hollow. So patient. She played the long game. And I helped her. God forgive me, I helped her kill an innocent woman and destroy a family. Why? The prosecutor asked. Why did you go along with this? She's my sister. She was all I had after our parents died. And she convinced me it was just to scare them, to make the chief vulnerable so she could comfort him. I didn't know about the poison until after Mom Ngozi died. By then I was in too deep. Where is this doctor now? The one who provided the poison. Dead. Heart attack 2 years ago. Ironic, isn't it? Obinna laughed bitterly. The poison he gave others eventually poisoned him. The confession was recorded, signed, and witnessed. It was devastating evidence that would guarantee conviction. When Adana's lawyer heard about her brother's confession, he advised her to plea bargain. You're going to prison. The only question is for how long. Cooperate now, show remorse, and maybe we can negotiate a lighter sentence. But Adana refused. She wasn't ready to admit defeat. Not yet. I'll fight this, she said coldly. They have nothing but circumstantial evidence and the word of criminals trying to save themselves. Her lawyer shook his head sadly. She still didn't understand. The game was over. At the Okonkwo mansion, Chidi was struggling with the revelations. She killed my mother, he whispered, sitting in the garden where he used to chase butterflies. She poisoned her. She took everything from us. Chief Okonkwo sat beside him, his arm around his son's shoulders. I know, my boy. I know. Why? What did we ever do to her? Nothing, the chief said. You did nothing. Some people's hearts are so empty, they can only think of themselves. They see other people's happiness as an obstacle to their own ambition. Chidi was silent for a long moment. Then, I feel sorry for her. Chief Okonkwo looked at his son in amazement. Sorry? For the woman who destroyed your childhood? Who killed your mother? She destroyed her own life too, Chidi said quietly. She had everything: beauty, education, opportunities. But she chose evil. Now she has nothing. She'll spend the rest of her life in prison, hated by everyone. That's sad. The chief pulled his son close, overwhelmed with emotion. After everything Adana had done, Chidi could still find compassion. His son had not just survived, he had remained good. You're a better person than I am, the chief said, his voice thick with pride and sadness. No, Chidi replied. I just learned from Mama. She used to tell me that bitterness is a poison we drink hoping someone else will die. I don't want to be poisoned anymore. I want to heal. Dr. Amara, the therapist the chief had hired, smiled when she heard this. That's wisdom, she told Chidi during one of their sessions. That's the kind of wisdom it takes some people a lifetime to learn. You found it at 18. I had good teachers, Chidi said. Mama taught me kindness. Daddy taught me strength. The streets taught me survival. Now I need to learn how to live again. And slowly, day by day, he was learning. 3 months later, the trial began. The courtroom in Lagos High Court was packed every single day. Media outlets fought for camera positions. The public gallery was standing room only. This was the most sensational case Nigeria had seen in years. Adana arrived each day in prison orange, her once perfect appearance now haggard. Her expensive legal team argued that the evidence was circumstantial, that Obinna was lying to save himself, that this was all a conspiracy. But the prosecution was methodical and devastating. Tun testified first, describing the planning, the surveillance, the day of the kidnapping. He produced the text messages from Obinna. His testimony was compelling because he didn't try to paint himself as innocent. I was part of it, Tun admitted on the stand. I drove them. I kept quiet for money. I'm guilty too. But I'm here now to tell the truth. That boy deserves justice. Adana's lawyer tried to discredit him. You're a convicted criminal. You spent 3 years in prison for kidnapping. Why should anyone believe you? Because I'm tired of lying, Tun said simply. And because telling the truth is the only way I can sleep at night anymore. Next came Obinna. The courtroom gasped when he was brought in under protective custody. Adana's face went white seeing her brother take the stand. Obinna, no, she whispered. But he didn't look at her. He testified for 3 hours, detailing the entire conspiracy. The planning. The execution. The poison. Everything. My sister is brilliant, Obinna said, his voice shaking. But she is also ruthless. She saw Chief Okonkwo as a prize to be won, and she didn't care who she had to destroy to win him. The defense attorney was aggressive. You're her brother. You're betraying your own blood to save yourself. I'm betraying her to save my soul, Obinna shot back. I've been dead inside for 10 years. Every night, I see that little boy's face. Every night, I think about Mrs. Ngozi dying slowly, wondering why she felt so tired all the time. Maybe this is my chance to be human again. The financial expert traced the money trail. The shell company. The payments. The connections. It was all there, documented and undeniable. Then came the moment everyone was waiting for. Chidi was called to testify. There was absolute silence in the courtroom as the 18-year-old walked to the witness stand. He was healthy now, no longer skeletal, but still carried the marks of his ordeal, the wariness in his eyes, the slight hesitation in his movements. The prosecutor asked him to describe the kidnapping, the years on the street, the wedding day. Chidi spoke quietly but clearly, his voice steady despite the pain in his words. When I saw my father's picture in the newspaper, everything came back, Chidi said. I walked for 3 days to get to that wedding because I knew he was my father. I knew I belonged with him. The defense attorney tried to shake him during cross-examination. Isn't it convenient that you remembered everything just when Chief Okonkwo was about to marry a wealthy woman? Isn't this just an elaborate scam? No, sir, Chidi said calmly. The DNA test proved I'm his son. Science doesn't lie. But memories can be implanted, coached, manipulated. You can't coach this, Chidi interrupted, pulling up his shirt to show the scars from the beating at the wedding. You can't coach 10 years of pain. You can't coach the way my father held me when he realized I was alive. You can't coach love. The courtroom erupted in applause. The judge banged his gavel for order, but even he looked moved. Chief Okonkwo sat in the gallery, tears streaming down his face as he watched his son testify with such courage and dignity. The trial lasted 3 weeks. When it was time for closing arguments, the prosecutor stood and addressed the jury. This case is about greed. Pure, unadulterated greed. Adana Akoli saw a wealthy man and decided he should be hers. When his family stood in the way, she removed them. She orchestrated the kidnapping of a 6-year-old child. She poisoned a loving mother. She destroyed a family. And when that child, against all odds, survived and found his way home, she ordered him beaten and humiliated. The prosecutor paused, letting the words sink in. The defense wants you to believe this is a conspiracy. But look at the evidence. Witness after witness. Document after document. Text message after text message. Adana Akoli is guilty. And she must pay for what she's done. The jury deliberated for only 4 hours. When they returned, the forewoman stood, her face grave. On the charge of conspiracy to commit kidnapping, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of child endangerment, guilty. On the charge of murder in the death of Mrs. Ngozi Okonkwo, guilty. Adana's face showed no emotion. She had known this was coming. But deep in her eyes, something had finally broken, the last vestige of her arrogance. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, looked at Adana with cold contempt. Adana Akoli, you have shown yourself to be a danger to society. You are cunning, remorseless, and utterly without conscience. You destroyed a family for personal gain. You orphaned a child. You murdered an innocent woman. I hereby sentence you to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The gavel fell. It was over. As Adana was led away in handcuffs, she looked back one last time at Chief Okonkwo and Chidi sitting together in the gallery. For just a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Regret. Envy. Hatred. It was impossible to tell. Then she was gone, swallowed by the system she had once thought herself above. Justice had been served. But for the Okonkwo family, the real work was just beginning. The work of healing. Of rebuilding. Of learning to be a family again. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and share it with your friends, and most important thing, turn your notification bell so you can get informed when I dropped another amazing story. Drop your thoughts and reactions in the comments. What would you do if your spouse tried to kill you and you survive? Will you take a revenge or disappear forever?